But just as he repeated those predictions, he repeatedly spoke about Dustin leaving on a stretcher. Now, Conor's predictions have been wrong before, but when he himself was in the incredibly unlikely position of leaving on a stretcher, it really felt like a total inversion and complete undoing of Mystic Mac.
All right, Jesse on Fire, welcome back to the channel. Now, we are going to talk about Dustin Poirier today, and we're going to talk about Conor McGregor, but this is not going to be the typical Dustin and Conor conversation that people have been having for the last couple of weeks, okay? I discovered through basic research that I've done a lot more preparation for this video than I normally do for videos, and I realized that I had tripped over myself and fallen on top of the most inspiring fighter in the entire UFC, and I didn't see it. I don't know how I didn't see it. Because I'm generally pretty good at that. And I didn't see it, and now I see it. And what I mean by that is the way that I view the sport. I did an incredibly long video about this maybe a week or two ago called TJ Dillashaw Proves the Haters Wrong. I did it literally the night after TJ Dillashaw won over Corey Sandhagen. And the video had nothing to do with TJ Dillashaw. All it had to do with, it's like 50 minutes long, and it's me talking about the sport and the gravity of these careers, what it means, success or failure, and the pressure that these guys are under, and how there are certain guys that have to wear a much bigger narrative than others. Islam Makhachev, I use as an example, right? Because he has the expectations of Khabib's father, Khabib. He has so much riding on his career, so much more than your average person who just has like a wife and a family, which is a heavy burden in and of itself. But Islam Makhachev, the implications of failure are so astronomical that you just have to marvel at his ability to perform, and you have to root for him. But I talked about that stuff, right? But here's the thing that I didn't really talk about very much in that video. If you watched it, I'm serious, go watch it if you haven't. Yeah, here, seriously, I know it sounds self-serving, but I promise you, if you're a fan of the sport, you'll like it. But the thing I didn't talk about on there was how certain fighters see themselves that way and others don't, right? Like there are fighters that are just grinder workhorses, where if they watched my video, I thought about this afterwards, where it was like, because there was a minute when I figured like if I showed that video to any fighter, they would be like super inspired thinking about it. And I realized it's not true. There's a lot of fighters that would be, and there are other fighters that are like, what are you talking about, man? Like I was a wrestler. Like I was an all-American wrestler, right? And I was like, what am I going to go get? I'm going to go get an office job, or am I going to just keep doing what I've been doing? It seems like a much more fun way to earn a living is, train and then fight for a living, versus your entire life's definition comes from your success or failure in the octagon, right? And so that doesn't apply to everyone. It doesn't apply to everyone. But for the people that it does apply to, that is so inspiring to me, and it's why I love the sport so much, is that. And I didn't realize right under my nose is the ultimate guy who is defining his entire life that way, and it's Dustin Poirier. I don't know how I didn't see it, man. I don't know how I didn't see it. I should have seen it right after the Max Holloway fight. It's inexcusable. I mean, it literally, like if you watch this channel consistently, what's the only thing that I say I'm good at? Do you ever hear me say I'm good at basically anything other than I can kick things hard and I know people? That's it. And I'm telling you, the thing that I'm most inspired by in this sport is when people attribute big meaning to their career, like huge, astronomical meaning to their career. And Dustin Poirier was right under my nose, and I just didn't even see it. And now I do. And I'm telling you right now, I don't care if Dustin ends up fighting against my little brother. I'm never rooting against that guy ever again. Ever. And I'll tell you what I mean. So what we're going to do in this video, and this is a long preamble for what the video is even going to be about, but we're going to be reacting to Mixed Molly's new video. So Mixed Molly Whoppery just put out a new Conor McGregor video, which is exceptional. And I initially set out, like I did a bunch of prep, like I've cut out all these scenes that I'm going to react to, etc. And I originally set out just to kind of react to the things that he said and then add on kind of my thoughts around it. And it's basically mostly about Conor and then about Dustin being so confident in the build-up, etc. And there's one major thing that I actually disagree with Mixmally on, which is very rare, but we'll talk about it. I told him I'd send him the video when it was done, and I'm such a spaz, I couldn't wait. So I ended up recording a 9-minute voice recording and then emailed it to him because I couldn't wait. Like it's like, no, he needs to hear this now. He probably won't see it for 3 fucking days. But anyway, but yeah. So how I want to lead this off though is I want to put in perspective who Dustin Poirier really is as a fighter, like where he is in the UFC as a fighter and where I missed it and why anyone rooting against this guy, it's fucking inexcusable. I'm saying I'm using that word in my direction. It's inexcusable that I didn't see it. Inexcusable. But I see it now. And I'm going to be honest, dude, cutting these scenes together that I'm about to show you, I definitely cried. 100%. So there's that. But that's what we're going to be doing, all right? So we're going to be basically reacting to some scenes here from Dustin and kind of laying out who he is because this matters when it comes to the next, the documentary that Mixmally did about the Dustin and Conor fight. This is really very relevant context, all right? So here we go. This is Dustin Poirier giving a portion of his speech after the Max Holloway fight. And think about what I'm saying. A person who defines their life by what happens in the octagon. And that's Dustin. And so think about that. His whole life, dude, his entire life is defined by what happens in the octagon. And think about that as you watch these clips. This one first. God damn. You'd actually have to be a psychopath to watch that and then ever feel comfortable rooting against that guy ever again. Okay. Now, one of the things that I was saying to Mixmally was like that moment right there was where his life had been defined. He's a champion now. Like there's a dividing line for him. And I've heard him talk about this in interviews too. There's a dividing line where everything that he was doing was building up to that moment, right? Where he's now validated. He's a champion. No matter what happens from there, they can't ever take that away from him. He was a world champion. Now, yeah, it's an interim championship, and he knows that too, right? And so one of the things that I was saying to Mixmally about this is like, once I wrap my brain around how Dustin really is inside the sport, I went back and I watched the Khabib fight, and I mean, when you watch his entrance, which I couldn't anyway. I would lose rights to it or whatever if I put it in here. But if you go find his entrance, go watch Dustin Poirier's entrance to that fight, you can see in his entire being, in his mind, this was destiny. His entire life had built up to that moment. Like every single thing he had ever done in the fight game had been preparation for that fight right there. Like he put that kind of weight on it, just like I'm talking about, where the implications of success or failure are literally in the person's mind, the definition of their entire life. And you could see it on him, He came out to that song, I'm a bad man. And you just saw, in his mind, he was going to win that fight. Like he was going to win that fight, and then he lost, right? And this is exactly what I'm talking about, dude. It goes from, this is going to be the pinnacle of my entire life to this. Now look at these two interviews after the fight where Dustin's talking. All right, here. Boom.
No, it was a great week. Probably the best weight cut I've had to 155 pounds. I have no excuses, man. Khabib's the world champ. I prepared very well for 10 weeks. That's it. I lost. I feel like I have a lot of fights left in me if I want. It's just this was my 41st mixed martial arts fight. These kind of pinnacle moments don't happen a lot in your career, and I feel like I'm gonna have to live with tonight for the rest of my life. I worked 14 years of mixed martial arts to get here, 41 fights. And, I just got to get home and see what's next. I'm not fighting just to fight. I'm fighting to be the world champ. And we just got to see,
Like I said, the way he described it was the way I said it. Every single thing he had done was leading up to that fight, right? Like 41 fights, however many years. And so and then to lose in that scenario. That's why the stakes are so high. Now watch him in the press conference directly after. And this is important context to think about, that this is where he was after the Khabib fight. Like, this is a person whose soul had been torn out of his body. Like I don't know. If you don't understand what I'm saying when I try to describe this stuff about like the weight that a person puts on themselves in this, or that Dustin's putting on himself, if it doesn't naturally kind of compute to you, I'm not going to be able to explain it to you. Like, I'm doing the best that I can, but like, if you don't understand, you can't fathom the crushing feeling of, there's just no other way to describe it. He had his soul torn out of his body. So anyway, watch this. This is the interview and the press conference right afterwards. This is like gut wrenching, man.
I felt like the way he was pulling back, it was hard for me to set up my combinations and get into a rhythm. I know I sound like I have a lot of excuses, but I was just so prepared, for tonight. This one really hurts. It's great, because it's going to help a lot of people. We're building a water well in Uganda, so that I'm sure with the memorabilia sold, we're going to reach the goal and build a solar power water well with a tower for the pygmy people in orphanage and school in Uganda. So I'm proud of that, But I wanted to leave tonight the world champ and just let myself down, man. But I appreciate them, helping out the charity. It's been growing, and I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, man. So think about where Dustin was right there, and use that as context going into this situation with Conor. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, actually think about it, dude. The guy had his heart torn out of his fucking body. He came back, he grinded through a camp. He went and fought Dan Hooker, incredibly challenging, very, very, hard fought win. 5 rounds where he took a lot of shots. And then the UFC sets him up to get knocked out by Conor as a stepping stone. If you don't realize, if you don't understand that that's what that fight was, then you know what? I'm not going to do the know-it-all shit today. I'm just going to tell you that's 100% what it was. Okay, 100%. When he fought Conor the first of the most recent 2, right, in January, that was a setup fight for Conor to win, plain and simple, so that Dana could get Conor a knockout victory so he could try to set up the Khabib rematch. That for sure. I don't care what anybody says. Like, this isn't like funny Jesse arguing in the comments, 1000%. That is what was happening. Dustin, stylistically, on paper, looked like a guy that was a beautiful matchup for Conor to showcase his striking and beat up and then knock out. Plain and simple. Because Dustin is a warrior, on his feet, stand, bang, but can get touched, right? Very durable. Okay. Prior to these most recent fights against Conor and Dustin, there's no one who had survived that had a style like that against Conor. No one. If you're going to get touched by anybody, you're going to get touched by Conor. The UFC thought that they were literally feeding a bait dog to Conor. And it turned out that bait dog is the best lightweight in the world. So that's where he was. 2 fights before that. He wins a split decision. He gets fed to the biggest star in the sport. And you guys know what happened there. So then going into this fight, this is a totally different dynamic, obviously, right? Totally different dynamic. But it's important context going into the rest of this video, which is like examining what happened here, right? Now, I should have done this at the very beginning, but for those of you who are unclear on who Mixed Molly Whoppery is, he's an artist. Like I don't know how to describe. It's like, I know I talk shit again. I know I talk a lot of shit on this channel. And what's a better channel than this? If you ever think I'm serious about that, which in some cases I am, but only in comparison to other channels that just sit and talk to a camera. But like, if you ever hear me say like, this is the best channel on YouTube, all you have to do is just go, what about Mixed Molly? And I'll just go, oh, pfft. I forgot he's even on YouTube because his content's so good. Like I don't even associate his content with YouTube. It's because it's like you take a fucking Van Gogh painting off the wall and all of a sudden it's speaking to you through the computer. It's like, it's mastery. And some of Mixed Molly's best stuff is about Conor. It really is, dude. Like, because Mixed Molly sees the game the exact same way as I do in terms of like the humanity and the narrative between these guys. And Conor, that's the reason why people like me and Mixed Molly still hold on to the Conor thing, is because Conor was the ultimate version of that when he was first coming up. The ultimate version of what we're talking about. Of like he's on a destined path. He believes it. It's like he inspires you because the gravity of what he's doing, it matters beyond just him. He's got a whole world of people just inspired by his journey. And a lot of times people like that, the journey on the way up is what the thing is for them. That's my, I mean, I'm going to talk about this throughout the video, but like my main commentary on this is like, some people people are built for different things, dude. Conor was built for an inspiring lightning ascent. I don't think anybody ever would have looked at him and been like, hey, what do you think the likelihood that Conor has a super long career, like defending his title a bunch of times, or like has any form of traditional career? Like that just wasn't his destiny. It was like, hey, what are your goals? And he's like, I want to win the world championship, and I want to have more money than I know what to do with and take care of my family. It's like, those are his absolute pinnacle goals when he's at his most inspired. And it's like, all right, well, now you've won both belts. And you have, I would imagine when you were saying you want more money than you ever imagined when you got $100,000 in the bank, I mean, maybe even less than that. I would imagine that the numbers you were thinking were probably like $30 million, right? Well, now you have 400. So like, I mean, what do you, a life without a lofty goal to a certain type of personality, you're just not going to get the best version of them. But Dustin is still on that path, right? He said it in that interview, and man, I'm glad that it looks like he's going to go fight for the title, because I want to see him win the title bad. But anyway, you know what? Let's just do this. Mixed Molly Whoppery has the best YouTube channel on the internet, absolutely bar none. And if you don't know about Mixed Molly's content, fucking get on it. But you're about to get a preview of it right now. This is his most recent video that just came out.
I was a little surprised by how much I wanted Conor to win this one. If he lost decisively, I just didn't think the goals that would appear within his limitations would be the type of goals that would motivate him to continue to commit himself to the sport. So yeah, I wanted the show to go on.
All right, let's stop right there real quick. So I also should have said, obviously, I'm going to be actually showing something like, 6% of Mixed Molly's video. You should definitely watch the whole thing. It's like 25 minutes long. I'm showing like 4 minutes of it or something. But yeah, I just pulled some things that I wanted to take note of, because that right there is exactly why I wanted Conor to win. And I told everybody. Now, again, that was before I saw Dustin as he actually is, which again, it's like fucking hiding in plain sight. But now I see him. But like, I even said that. I said that on like probably 10 live streams where I was like, I just like the sport is more exciting with Conor in it. And like no matter what Conor does, he tapped into a part of my, like a part of my, he would have to do something so fucked up for me to fully just write him off. I mean, it's like, if you inspire a person to the level that he inspired me on his way up, I'm still inspired by the guy. All right, let's go to the next part.
Can he still be that guy? We heard that question posed time after time, and Conor had no hesitation answering it.
You've got people questioning whether or not the passion to do this is still there for you.
There's a lot more left in me. I'm still very young. I'm very fresh in the game. And I'm a dangerous man, Steve, and I'm the most dangerous of them all. So I'm going to prove how dangerous I am, because trust me, in the mindset I'm in, I'm really, really dangerous. This man is not, it's not going to be pretty what's going to happen to this man in here.
Let's stop there real quick. So here's the thing. Like I say on here all the time, I am really good at reading people, man. And I've talked about this a bunch on the channel also, where people say a bunch of shit going into the fights, and then the fight happens, and it's like, oh, well, this guy ended up winning. And so they're like, wow, this guy, he's like magic. It's look at how in his head he was. Look at the guy's dirt. And a lot of times it's just like, okay, well, and then if he would have lost, people would have been like, oh, this guy, like, he's a joke. He's a shell of himself. You can't fake the thing that I could see in people. And people are like, oh, he looks like he's trying to talk himself into it. I will acknowledge it, like in the press conference when he was doing like the show or whatever, that was weird. And I said so right afterwards. I was like, dude, he looks like he's like playing himself in a movie. But in those interviews where he's sitting and he's talking like he's not doing the show, he is confident. Like he's extremely bulletproof confident right there. That's not, you can't fake that. I'm telling you, I am telling you 100%. I will see it. If a person is faking it, I can see it. Okay. And he's not faking it right there. He was faking all that shit at the press conference, which is why, but that right there is why I was so confident that he was going to do well, was in those interviews with Stephen A. I was like, oh man. And you got to keep in mind, dude, his leg broke, dude. Like his leg broke.
Conor lost the fight. He broke his leg. He lost the trilogy. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. Dustin Poirier is elite. He's excellent. But I think Conor lost much more than a fight in this one. Conor lost in ways I never would have imagined. In fact, outside the incredible number of pay-per-views they sold, Conor seemed to lose ground in virtually every sense.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree with that on its face. So out of the gate, I agree with that. But we're going to come back to that later, because that slightly overlaps with the area that I'm going to push back on. But not really. I mean, yeah, he did. He lost in all categories. And again, this is the craziest thing about this. Is like, okay, so he loses to Khabib, best lightweight ever. He loses to Dustin Poirier, who turns out might be the other best lightweight in the world, right? And in the second one, Conor's leg broke, right? So in reality, like, people are looking at Conor like he's like this completely insignificant nobody fighter. And it honestly, like, the more I think about it, the more disrespectful it is to Dustin Poirier, like, and I realize I am very guilty of that. Like, just being like, if Conor lost, then let's analyze what Conor was doing, versus like, dude, Dustin is a hard man. Like, he's lost to Khabib. That's it. Khabib. And he almost beat him. He almost submitted him. I mean, so I'm done doing that, is what I'm saying. I'm done just acting as though Dustin is like, it's as if like Conor lost to like the number 10 guy. I'm just not doing that anymore. So when we evaluate Conor as a fighter and his future, I think everybody just needs to accept, like, he just lost to the number 1 and number 2 guy. I mean, plain and simple. And candidly, I mean, look, if he comes back and he loses to like RDA, that's a whole different ballgame. But RDA isn't Dustin Poirier, But in terms of his image, I do agree with that. But again, I just don't think it's necessarily being evaluated correctly by everyone. I mean, he hasn't won a 155-pound fight in years, but they're weird circumstances, dude. He left the sport to go box. Then he fought Cowboy at 170, and he's fought. I mean, it's just like they're just weird circumstances. So the jury's still out on him. But the bottom line is Poirier is the fucking man, dude. You know. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, there's nothing to be said when you've really badly hurt someone like that so fast. It's not.
I'm sure that's true. And heading into this fight, Dustin had just got the KO. So when Conor tried to mess with Poirier's mind, it felt like he was trying to seize an edge in an impossible situation. And critically, it seemed Poirier felt the same way. He really didn't give a shit. He laughed some of it off. Figuratively, he was rolling his eyes and yawning the whole way through. Sometimes he responded, but he was mostly indifferent.
For me, the aura's not there anymore. Very dangerous fighter sitting right here for sure, no doubt. But I see a man, you guys in the crowd, cheer it up, have fun. But I see a man here in front of me that I defeated, and I know I can defeat again.
So you knew the trash talk was coming this time around. How do you prepare for that?
I don't. I just don't care about this stuff anymore.
Now, it's easy to say that, but there was a couple of moments that illustrated Poirier really didn't give a shit. It's just deflating. Trying to bully Poirier in this situation is a strategy I think Conor would have known to avoid before. I thought there was great clarity and awareness of the dynamics at play in how Conor handled the build-up to the second Nate fight. He toned the trash talk down enormously, and eventually, Dustin did put Conor in his place by bluntly presenting him with the obvious reality of the situation, to which there simply is no comeback.
Conor, in the build-up to the last fight, you were unusually kind to Dustin. Now on fight week, it's the exact opposite.
Because he got knocked the fuck out.
All right, let's stop there for a second. So, yeah, I mean, obviously what we're all driving at in this section is just how, Conor's instincts seemed off when it came to the pre-fight, right? Where it's like, dude, you literally just did this whole public, back rub. Especially in hindsight, it's like, unless he really was just like, let's go sell this fight, let's go sell the shit out of this fight, which is totally possible. He's a professional. And then he goes out and does the press conferences and behaves that way. But I mean, he knows, Dustin just knocked him out. I don't know. I agree with Mix Molly that Conor was very off base there. All right, continue.
But this encapsulates the tone of UFC 264.
No, it was kind of like that made it him less powerful, I felt, because he's talking silly stuff about my wife. She's my husband or something. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about?
I love that. It's just the perfect combination of confusion and indifference. And consider how hard Conor pushed that angle. I mean, he was trying to get the crowd to chant Jolie's wife. That was the ace up his sleeve. This entire interview was brilliant. And you tell me who was interpreting reality in a more reasonable manner.
I felt like I saw a guy who's unsure of himself, scared, trying to hype himself up. I felt good. Just how crazy he has to, I feel like he has to work himself up to be that guy, and I am that guy. I don't have to do that, I know.
But he has now kind of tried to paint what you did in January in a different light. He's saying that you got freebies in that fight.
He's doing himself a disservice by not reassessing everything and figuring out what really went wrong. That's what losers do. They scramble to find something to stand on, and that's what he's doing.
Because Conor, he had this dual thing going on where in those one-on-one interviews, it was like, that is a good look, That's a great look right there that he's given in those interviews. Then he'd get on stage and just sound crazy, where you were like, oh my God. It's like the old thing about, it's tough to get up and train when you're waking up in silk pajamas. That's like an old adage, among fighters. It's like, once you get rich, it's hard to train. But that doesn't apply to everybody, right? How do you explain Mayweather, Canelo, guys like that? That's just not necessarily true. The thing is that I believe it is it's like, what is your driver? Where most people are looking at maybe they need to improve their, their hooks and their straights or whatever. And I think the mental game is as important or more important than a person's skills in a lot of cases. And so to me, I'm thinking about how do they position themselves mentally to become a champion? And it's if you're Floyd Mayweather, you grew up and your vision was to retire 50-0. I mean, seriously, like Floyd's whole mentality, his whole entire life was, I'm just never going to lose. I'm going to be a champion and I'm just never going to lose, right? And then you have other guys with, similar, but if your outlook is, I'm going to have a meteoric rise and win the championship, okay? This is a movie that we've seen before. If that's what your vision is, right? Then what happens after they win the title? Okay, because this is exactly what happened with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury was like, I'm going to be the heavyweight champion of the world. He goes undefeated. He beats Klitschko, and it's the pinnacle of his life. Everything that he had done, all built up to that moment. But he had never thought past that. And you think that doesn't, I realize people will hear me say that, and it won't make sense to them. They're like, well, now he's got all the money in the world, and he's the champion. Why? I mean, now he can just start going from there. It's like, that's not how it works, man. Not for this. Not for this. When you have to be fully invested in what you're doing. Like 100% invested and solely focused on, I mean, you're literally, your goal is to be the best fighter in the world. Do you understand the millimeters between success and failure? Like the margin of error that goes from you knock a guy out to you get knocked out. Or the 1 or 2 decisions, you grab their wrist from this angle as opposed to this angle and boom, you got submitted. It's like you have to be perfect. And so the amount of focus it takes to do that is enormous. And so if your goal was to be the champion, you became the champion, and you start being like, man, I got all this money, I'm losing focus, all of a sudden I'm 400 pounds, I'm Tyson Fury. Like Tyson Fury had to literally completely restructure his entire life to get back to where he was, he was great again. And Conor, I'm telling you, is the same. I mean, he's not, he never went to 400 pounds, but what happened? Like he got to where he had more money than he knew what to do with. He had both belts, and he lost his goddamn mind. And he actually lost his mind in a very similar way. Tyson Fury was doing blow and partying and got super heavy. Conor was doing blow and partying and doing crazy stuff. And it's like the identical story. Guys that came from nothing, they had their goal as a specific thing, they achieved it, and then they lost their fucking minds. And like with Conor, I mean, that singular purpose that he was on was such a huge part of his entire deal that that's why I think he has to act in the press conferences. That's why I think that that whole thing wouldn't have even made sense to him before, to put on the sunglasses and yell at Dustin in a rematch when he just got knocked out. That wouldn't have even made sense to him before. But it's because back then the whole thing was real. He really was on this pursuit, this kind of all-encompassing pursuit. And now he's accomplished everything, and now he just loves to fight. And it's just not the same. And so he wants to hype the fight. So he throws on a suit, throws on some glasses, says some crazy shit. And that makes sense to him because it's just not the same thing. I don't know if I'm doing a good job explaining that, but anyway, let's continue.
This time around, Poirier's appraisal was far more resonant than Conor's.
So I said I'd knock him out in the first round, and I knocked him out in the first round. You can call me Mystic Mac because I predict these things.
Mystic Mac. He was born on the night of the first Poirier fight.
Everyone's already remarked on the fact that Conor had predicted the extremely unlikely outcome that Dustin would leave early on a stretcher. I mean, that is unlikely. We rarely see it. But then he himself ended up leaving early on a stretcher.
What is the prediction? How do you see it playing out on Saturday night?
Dustin's going out on a stretcher. That's my prediction. I don't give a fuck about him, to be honest. It's just how I am. He's a corpse, a dead body. A blank face. It's going to get his ass whooped and took out on a stretcher.
You think it goes all 25?
No, he's getting taken out on a stretcher.
Now, obviously, some people found it funny to represent some type of ironic justice, but it does feel significant. Conor was famous for his predictions. Mystic Mac was born the night of the first Poirier fight when he predicted a first-round finish. His description of how the Mendes fight, including facing adversity with the wrestling, getting back to his feet and finishing Mendes in the second, was amazing. Then he was seen practicing a strike backstage that moments later finished Aldo in the first exchange of the fucking fight. He was just so obsessed and dialed in and talented that his predictions were eerie. His momentum and aura and his understanding of the dynamics of how the two martial artists matched up almost seemed to grant him some type of clairvoyance. Things just went according to plan, like he could see the fucking future, and it was exciting to watch. But just as he repeated those predictions, he repeatedly spoke about Dustin leaving on a stretcher. Now, Conor's predictions have been wrong before, but when he himself was in the incredibly unlikely position of leaving on a stretcher, it really felt like the total inversion and complete undoing of Mystic Mac.
Now, that was a long clip for me to put in there, but I wanted to include all of that because, again, that right there. That's Mix Molly being just brilliant, you know? He's poetic. Like I said, this video that he did is like 24, 25 minutes long. It's exceptional. It's exceptional. And, but that thing that he put together right there is like, you know, you understand from the metaphorical stance, you know, it's the death of Mystic Mac and it's symbol. I mean, I don't even really have anything to add to that other than that it's a brilliant take. This is the part that I'm going to push back on, though. All right, ready? Let's go. Boom.
If anything, it felt more like the symbolic death of Mystic Mac. But I think the biggest crack we saw in Conor, no pun intended, was in how he dealt with the loss. This was an area he was always outstanding. In previous losses, you always felt this guy is completely self-aware. He's in control of his emotions, and he understands optics better than anyone. He's just a pro on every fucking level.
It is what it is. He fought a hell of a fight, and that's it. What can you do? I'm happy for him. It's the whole shebang, you know what I mean? But I have no excuses here. It was a phenomenal performance by Dustin. You know, hats off to Nate. He fought very well. He stayed in there. Him and Nick have that kind of style, you know, they can take it and remain in there and remain in your face. He was just simply more efficient with his energy, stayed in my face, capitalized on it. I make no excuses. I got Nate. I was actually relishing the opportunity to step in there against Nate. I have always enjoyed Nate and Nick and their fighting approach, and even the build-up. I had a lot of fun in it, like listening to some of the things he was saying.
Conor could always salvage some type of moral victory in defeat by showing restraint and character. But this time, that went right out the fucking window. Conor's handling of the loss was classless and out of control. He's threatening Poirier from the floor. He's still talking about Jolie in his DMs. With one leg, he's talking about meeting Dustin in the parking lot. I mean, it was fucking nuts.
Let's stop there. All right, so obviously the point that Mix Molly's making is that Conor always, in defeat, was respectful. You know, it was like, see, that's why that was one of the main reasons why I like Conor so much, was because when he lost, like I've told everybody this story, I hated Conor. He was my least favorite fighter. And then he fought Nate Diaz, and when he lost, from the moment he lost the first fight till he won the second fight, that was my evaluation period, where I was like, oh, maybe I had this guy wrong. And I watched how he behaved from the minute that he lost Nate Diaz till the minute that he won the second fight. And he went literally from my least favorite fighter to my favorite fighter, just like that. And it was because it's easy to win, dude. It's hard to lose. And you get to see what people are when they lose. And Conor was so respectful. He made no excuses whatsoever. He just went back to the drawing board, and he's like, I'll get it back. He could have fought any other person. He could have fought anyone. They fought at 170. He was a 145-pound champion. He could have just written that off as whatever, gone back to 145. He could have done anything he wanted. And he demanded the same fight at 170, and he won. I mean, that's the, goddamn, man. That's the shit that I fucking love more than anything. But the point I'm making here is that this post-fight seems extraordinarily out of character. Like something is actually different about Conor. Like he snapped, right? Like this is a new Conor that lacks class, right? Like Conor was always really classy in defeat, yada yada. This is a new thing. This is like a new thing. Like Conor's gone off the deep end. And I think that's what most people think, and that's kind of how I interpreted it initially. But then as I was evaluating, when I was watching Mix Molly's content and I was thinking about Conor as a person, I'm like, hang on. Let me think about this for a minute, okay? Because this is the part where I disagree with Mix Molly, and I think everybody. Here's the deal. So you got to think about where does that come from? You know, like where does a person being so humble in defeat come from, right? That is that's an actual core tenet of a person's personality, right? Like the way you handle defeat, you can learn to hype a fight before a fight. You can learn, you know, to do all of the other things. But the way you behave in defeat, that is built into you, right? TJ Dillashaw, perfect example, right? Like you teach him how to do fucking whatever, hype in a fight, but good luck training out of TJ that if he loses, he's going to say it's not his fault and then fuck that, it's not fair, and he loses his goddamn, because he's the most competitive human being on earth. Like, he will always be a shit loser. When he's 80 years old, you could beat him in Monopoly. He'll flip the fucking board over and tell you that you're a piece of shit for playing. Okay? That's a fact. Like, just, I'm serious. Like, seriously think about that. Think about people that you know and how they lose. And Conor, that is a fundamental core tenet of his personality. And I'm going to say this, I do not believe he's like drinking and on drugs, or it certainly wasn't when he was, getting ready to fight Dustin Poirier, which is the only thing that can really give a person like an actual like personality transplant. And so if you sit there and you go, okay, well, I don't believe that his personality's changed in like some complete fundamental way just because he has money, because I don't believe that that's not how it works. Money, it doesn't change you. Money just shows who you are, right? That's a fact. Okay, people got money, they turned into assholes. Nope, they were assholes before. They just now have the ability to be an asshole because they can tell everyone to fuck you. Or, I mean, that's person who's nice, they get money, they become more nice. But that how do you behave in loss thing, that's not a thing that's going to change in a person. And so when I thought about that, I was like, well, what, like, think it through, right? In every other one of these situations, none of them were the same as this one, right? Now, can you take for granted about Conor? Conor is a genius when it comes to understanding how the public's going to view him. Maybe the greatest of all time, actually, in terms of fight. Maybe, honest to God, actually, maybe the greatest of all time as it relates to fighters understanding the public and how they're going to react to things that they do. Like, I really believe that. Like, he's a hyper genius with that stuff. He always knew exactly how to handle everything, and he would behave badly. He would do all kinds of crazy stuff. But like, take the example when he punched the old man in the head. And I mean, when you watch the video, the old man's obviously being a prick, but there's no scenario where you can defend punching an old man if you're Conor McGregor, or period. Matter of fact, you can't really defend punching anyone in the back of the head who's sitting at a bar stool. It's kind of irrelevant, like old man, whoever, you just can't. So it's an indefensible act. It's on tape. How does he handle it? He goes on Ariel's show and like it just throws his tail between his legs and just completely apologizes, like just owns it. Like he knows how to manage his public persona. And so if we assume he hasn't had a personality transplant, then, and that he's not throwing the rule book out the window and just all of a sudden acting completely off of instinct and whatever, then what's he doing, right? Because here's the outcome, right? Like, if you assume that he's a hyper genius, which he is when it comes to this stuff, then you think, okay, well, what was the outcome of him behaving that way? Because then you can back into the fact that he probably was calculated. If it's a good outcome, then he probably did it on purpose. Do you understand what I'm saying? If he's a hyper genius for this stuff, and then whatever he did turned out to be a net benefit to him, then most likely he was calculated when he did it, because time immemorial would say that that's the case. And so what happened? He loses to Poirier again, right? So he lost again. Now, the circumstances, he broke his leg, obviously, so like it's not I've done other videos on this. Dustin landed eight strikes when he was on top of him. It was not at all a decisive victory. 10-8, patently absurd. But nonetheless, he lost, right? Now, I think Conor, on autopilot, realized this is not a fight that he can take and just accept. I think that I think that Ronda Rousey was right. Like when Ronda Rousey said, wow, unbelievable. Conor had the wherewithal to just start hyping his next fight with his ankle folded in half. And I remember when I heard that, I was like, man, she's probably just kissing his ass. And I actually now, through new bifocals, I think she's 100% right. I think that's exactly what he was doing. I think that he was very aware, because think about it. Just think about it. What did everybody want him to do, right? I mean, the people who are really hating on him, they just want him to lose and then just fall off the face of the earth. So it doesn't really matter. Like they were, they were going to hate on him no matter what. But the people who are saying, oh, he was really classless, really classless, really wish he would have handled it different. Okay, so what do you hope that he would have done? Well, I hope that he would have just maybe not said anything in the octagon, and just taken the stretcher out, maybe tweeted something, congratulations to Dustin, great fight, the end. Okay. So think about that, and let's just assume that Conor's metric, the only metric that matters, is his fight career, right? Like how much, how many people are going to be interested to watch his next fight. That's his metric. That's the only thing that he cares about, right? Is that he still is on top of the hype train. Now, would it have been better for his hype train if he just said, jolly good fight, Dustin? Or if he said, your wife's in my DMs, this isn't over, you didn't beat me, it's a doctor stoppage, fuck everybody, I'm going to kill you next time, I'm going to get you and your family, okay? Which of those two things is going to lead to more pay-per-views? Now, look, believe me, I understand you guys hate Conor, okay? I get it. But save the comment, it's not worth it. Who cares what the outcome is? He's a piece of shit. That's not what we're talking about here. We're having like a grown-up conversation. We're talking about actual business. We're talking about business and metrics, okay? Which of those two behaviors is going to drive more pay-per-view buys? And I love when people who, are not business people, clearly, they look at like a person who has a bunch of money, let's call it $300 million. And like, for some reason in their mind, they think that means that thinking of future impact to revenue just doesn't exist for that person. They're like, well, he's got $300 million. Why would he be thinking about selling more pay-per-views? He doesn't need the money. It's like, doesn't need the money? Is that a thing? Okay. Is that a thing? Because I'm pretty sure in the Western world, the driving force behind what everybody's doing for the most part is maximizing earnings, right? And so Conor's supposed to be different because he's made a lot of money. Here's the other thing. People who have made a lot of money generally are more likely to be focused on, revenue impact. And so if you think about it through those eyes, I actually don't think Conor was out of control at all. I think what he did was calculated. I think what he's been doing has been calculated. I'm not going to, the Khabib's dad thing is so low down that I'm not even going to throw that in the fire, because even if it is part of an act, no, you can't say that. But let's just say I think that he's cultivating a bad guy thing on purpose. I do believe that. So, but anyway, Mixed Molly's video is absolutely unbelievable. Give it a run. I probably have been talking for like an hour now, but I think this is going to be a good video. So anyway, Dustin Poirier is my favorite fighter now, and that's what I got. Love you guys. Peace.